You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 357.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're all doing well and that you had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. I am excited to be here in July, and today I want to talk about the dinner party analogy. This is a concept that I came up with when I talk about and teach about writing a cookbook and creating a concept for your cookbook. A lot of people want to set out to write a cookbook, but they really don't know exactly what they want the cookbook to be about. Or the flip side of that is they try to include everything and all of their life's work in a cookbook, when really the best cookbooks that we pitch to publishers have a narrow focus and a very specific audience that we're writing for. So I created the dinner party analogy as part of what I teach inside my Get Paid to Get Published program. Get Paid to Get Published is my flagship group coaching program for cookbook writers who want to get paid to write a cookbook without spending their own money to get published. So if this is you and you are interested in becoming a cookbook writer who gets a book deal, this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to, because this is how we teach about creating cookbook concepts. Now, a couple weeks ago, I shared an episode about trends in cookbook publishing, trends for concepts for cookbooks, and there were 5 different trends plus a bonus trend for brand cookbooks. So really 5 trends for individuals that relate to cookbook writing. But beyond that, you still have to take what you know and who you are and who you're serving and come up with a concept for a cookbook. So I thought I would share today about my dinner party analogy and help you to take a look at your thoughts about your cookbook concept, because I like to use metaphors when I teach, and the dinner party analogy is a perfect example of that. So when we're writing a cookbook, it's a lot like hosting a dinner party. When I have a dinner party, I'm gathering people around the table, I'm inviting them over. We're maybe having a meal, some connection, obviously spending time together, which is a lot of fun. So when you think about a dinner party, you are the host of the dinner party. And every good dinner party starts with a great host. And let's assume that that is you. So you want to ask yourself questions like, what are you known for? What kind of cooking or teaching are you able to do? What have you been known to host in your kitchen? All of your skills, all of your expertise, the heart of what you do all comes to the table through you and through what you know and how you can help others. So if you think about your cookbook like a dinner party, you're the guide in your cookbook, and you're going to be helping people in your cookbook. You're going to be teaching them maybe how to cook without fear. You're going to be helping them create meals that make them feel like an accomplished cook, or maybe to help bring healing through an illness or during perhaps grief or loss. Or maybe you are a host that's going to help people just have fun in the kitchen, throw amazing parties themselves, entertain, and really have a good time in their kitchen. So you, as the host of the party, have actually become the person that is the guide and helps other people. And when you think about then who's invited to the party, you want to think about the ideal reader for your cookbook. Now, a lot of times this is talked about, but this part matters more than writers realize, because without readers, we don't have cookbooks. Without people like you who are listening that love to read cookbooks and buy cookbooks and share the books that you're reading from other cookbook authors, we don't have books that sell and books that actually are popular and books that get shared and books that find an audience. So as the cookbook writer, your readers are the life force behind your project. So you want to spend some time thinking about who they are. And there's 4 different things that I encourage you to think about when you think about your cookbook audience. Number 1, you want to generally think about their age, about their gender, and about their lifestyle. This is important because this will help determine where your readers for your cookbook hang out so that you can actively find them and help them in advance of even selling them a book. And that goes along with building the platform for your book. So how old are they? What gender are they? And what is their lifestyle? Geographics, things like where they live, where they shop, where they eat, how they shop are very important. Behaviors that they have related to food and cooking. Do they like to do meal prep? Do they like to grocery shop online, perhaps? Do they follow certain food bloggers or certain types of influencers online? Do they like to go to cooking classes? Would they rather shop in person, shop at a farmer's market? What is it about behaviors that they have? This is important too because it's really going to determine the types of information that you put in your cookbook. And then the last thing is called psychographics, but I want you to think about things that frustrate your cookbook audience. What do they really want from their kitchen? How do they want to feel when they cook or bake or prepare food? And what is the emotion behind what they're looking for in a cookbook? And if you wrap all of those things up, demographics, geographics, their behaviors, and their psychographics, you really come up with a person. And a lot of times, it's interesting to me that I've noticed over the years that the audience for a lot of my cookbooks are very similar to the people that write them. So I wrote my first cookbook all about seasonal cooking in Kentucky, a seasonal cooking journey through a Kentucky year. And people that were attracted to that book tended to be a lot like me. They were dedicated home cooks. They liked to have recipes they could rely on. They enjoyed maybe doing some different kinds of cooking seasonally or on the weekend when during the week their focus was getting dinner on the table for their family. They loved to cook breakfast when they had time. They liked to shop at farmers markets. They liked to vary what they cook based on the season. They varied what they bought at the supermarket or at the farmer's market based on the season. And it ended up that the person that I was writing my book for was a lot like me. And it's funny when we think about a dinner party and our friends, a lot of times the people that we invite over to our home or our apartment tend to be a lot like us also. So when you're thinking about your ideal reader, don't overthink this, but really think about someone maybe like you. And it's probably the you that you were before you actually figured out what you know in the kitchen. And because the question is what's going to change for them as a result of their book? And sometimes the books that we want to write are the books that we wish we had when we were facing a certain time in our life. Maybe it's a problem, maybe they want some more joy or more ease or some more knowledge about a topic, and we can provide that for them because we have learned how to do that ourselves in our own kitchen. Cookbooks often offer a solution, and like I said, no one ever buys a cookbook because they want to feel worse or they want to have terrible meals. But think about the person that you're writing your cookbook for and try to think about if they are a person a lot like you and a person a lot like you before you figured out your process or your method or the way that you do things in your kitchen, and you're going to help your reader achieve that similar type of transformation. The next thing you want to think about then is not only who's coming to the party, but what's on the menu. And when you think about what's on the menu, the part of this that relates to the cookbook project when we define a cookbook concept is there are so many options here about what we can serve in our books. You can talk about ingredient cookbooks, single ingredient cookbooks, eggs or beans or cheese. This is an infinite number of books that we could potentially write. And single topic cookbooks are popular. I interviewed several years ago a woman who wrote a cookbook all about eggs, and it was 800 recipes about eggs. And I will link to that in the show notes. The name of the book was Too Many Eggs. And it's a story of the ingredient of eggs. You also can talk about a cooking method, perhaps smoking or braising or batch cooking. Work cooking with an air fryer, an Instant Pot. Maybe there's a cooking method that you have really mastered. That would be a cookbook then about a cooking method. Another type of story that you could tell in a book is a story of a particular food item, a stew or a sauce or a sourdough. And that's different from an ingredient because it's usually a type of food. You can also talk about a way of eating seasonally, eating for healing or plant-based eating. You can talk about places like your hometown, your home state, your specific region where you grew up, maybe a particular place like a restaurant or a bed and breakfast or an inn. These types of cookbooks are stories about a place. Could be a time of the day, breakfast time, tea time, weekend cooking. Stories of holidays like Christmas, Kwanzaa, Passover, 4th of July. All of these are examples of holidays. So you kind of get the message here that there are an infinite number of stories that you can tell that actually would be the topic of your cookbook. And that's what I call the menu part of the dinner party analogy. So think about that for your own cookbook. There is no one right way to define your concept, but remember there is a true way. And what I mean by that is it's a way that reflects the life that you live, what your readers need, and the transformation or solution that you are offering to them through the book. Now, the next thing we need to talk about when it comes to the dinner party analogy and your cookbook concept is what is it that sets your cookbook apart from other cookbooks? If there are 2 cookbooks about breakfast and you've written one of them, what is the hook or unique solution that you offer? Why would a reader choose your book about breakfast over another book about breakfast? What can they find in your book that's missing elsewhere? And what promise or transformation does your book deliver? So I have a breakfast cookbook from 2 different restaurants. So the difference between those 2 breakfast cookbooks, of course, is the place where the recipes come from and the story of the restaurant and the chef behind the restaurants. This is where we need to dig deep a little bit, not just write what's in the book, but what the reader actually gets from the book. And usually that is related to you and your personal story. Because like I mentioned last week, or 2 weeks ago when I was talking about the cookbook trends, is we're not just teaching recipes. We're giving them a story. We're helping them feel more confident, get some clarity, gain some joy, peace, ease, or help them in the kitchen. And that is worth something. So what is it that sets your cookbook apart? So that's the dinner party analogy, who you are as the host and what's on the menu at your party, meaning who you are writing your cookbook for and what you're offering them in your cookbook, including not just the story that you're telling, but what is it that actually sets this book apart from other cookbooks. And one thing I always recommend that my students do is before you can actually write a book proposal, you need to do a competition study. Because we're not going to want to pitch a book to a publisher or an agent that's identical to another book that has been published. Now, chances are, if you are adding a personal element to your book, that wouldn't be possible anyway. If you're expressing all your own recipes in your own words, it would never be a carbon copy of someone else's book. But I want you to study the landscape of cookbooks because there are certain cookbooks now that are more saleable, more marketable, more popular, fit in more with our times than the kind of cookbooks that were perhaps written 5 or 10 years ago. This doesn't mean that you are copying or comparing when you look at competition. You're studying the landscape. You're seeing what's marketable and sellable. You're seeing the types of books that publishers are buying. So you want to try to find out what books are similar to the book you want to write. You want to try to find out how they're structured. You also want to be able to verbalize how your book is going to be different. And this will help you clarify your concept and make sure that what you are offering in your cookbook is going to be unique. So that is it for talking about the dinner party analogy. That's what I mean. You're the host of the party. You have guests that are coming to the party. You know what you're serving in your book, and you know who you're writing your book for. This is the power of defining your cookbook concept using this analogy. So if you are thinking about a cookbook project of your own and you are interested in getting a book deal, it's very important to think about your cookbook concept in this way. And if you head down to the show notes, I have a link for a fun free training that I offer called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook Without Spending Your Own Money to Get Published. And you're welcome to sign up for that on-demand training. Watch what I have to offer inside that training. One of the pillars is what we just talked about with the dinner party analogy, as well as a more in-depth discussion about the 3 other pillars I teach in the program, which is building your platform, writing your proposal, and pitching a publisher. So I hope that you enjoy that. Again, head on down to the show notes, or you can go to www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free and watch that fun free training on demand. So that is it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. Until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.